Hi, Dr. Eddie. So grateful to see you again. I can't believe we're into July, but grateful for your participation. And what do you have for us today?
Well, it's always great to be here with you. And today what we're going to be talking about is what I believe is at the core of addiction. Now, for many people who have followed me over the years, they're probably going to run right to the idea that, oh, unresolved childhood pain point. That's what I'd be talking about. Now, those are definitely critical. There's no doubt about it. They play part in the whole process. But for example, how would a unresolved childhood pain point impact us? Well, perhaps maybe you're feeling unappreciated at your job, at work. And what happens there is that your inner child, if your inner child if you dealt with a father in your growing up who never seemed to be any pleased with any of your accomplishments, that would leave you feeling not good enough. So therefore, right now, I don't feel good. I don't feel like I'm appreciated at work. Instead of just, wow, you know what, these folks, they don't, really show that they're very happy with what you do. You instead slide over to what's wrong with me. And therefore, again, see, I must not be good enough. That's why they're not, commenting on my work. They're not appreciating my work. And it may just be the fact that they're not people who are very expressive when it comes to, validating people or giving affirmation. But yet, because of our childhood pain points, we're going to go down that pathway. Let's say neighbors don't invite you to a party they're having. One day all of a sudden, one night you look out and it's all like you can see there are all cars out there and stuff. And now, if you again have a child, if you were ignored by many of the kids in the neighborhood or in school growing up, and you felt like you didn't really belong, you felt like you were isolated. That event, even though maybe you're good friends with the neighbors and you've been to parties before, can wind up triggering you. And where you're going to go with, if not to rationalize and say, well, you know what, maybe it's a bunch of people from their work or their family or something like that. Instead, it's going to be what's wrong with me that they wouldn't allow me to go. They're rejecting me in that. So therefore, again, yes, the unresolved childhood pain points are really critical. But when I look at what at the core of addiction, I think it's anxiety. I think it's our anxiety. I have never met, anyone who's dealt with addiction, and I've dealt with numerous types of addictions, prior to becoming exclusive in the area of sexual addictions. I dealt with people who dealt with alcoholism and drug abuse and had gambling problems and such. All of them have anxiousness. They all deal with that anxiety. And I think for me, again, it is, at the core. So I'm going to stop here for a moment. Tammy, I want to get your opinion. What do you think about that anxiety is?
I think you're dead on. I think it's partly we don't know how to handle life. And so we have an anxiousness about handling life on life's terms. And so I'm going to use ineptness, in our inability to do that, we escape into the safety of whatever form of acting out we're using. So
I fully agree, because again, I think I go back to the idea you said, it's hard for us to really manage life in the way it comes at us. And that's true. And part of the reason for that is we go back to, again, when we were younger, really nobody really guiding us along on how to deal with these emotional pain points, dealing with life. When I was growing up, no one in my household ever talked about what am I going to do after I graduate?
Oh, wow.
Nobody ever asked. My mother didn't ask, my stepfather didn't ask. It was just, I was on my own, just on my own to figure it all out. And that's what I had to do with that. But with that comes a lot of anxiety. You know, you're making the right choice, you're making the wrong choice. And I think that's part of it also, is that we also, those who deal with addictions, we're kind of numb to our anxiety. And what I mean by that is we're not aware of the intensity that it has because we've been dealing with it for so long. And that in itself becomes a major problem, right? Because again, the goal that we should have when we're dealing with addictions is the idea to be conscious that our anxiety level is starting to increase, starting to, get higher. And we need to understand, most importantly, what is what I call the breaking point for ourselves. So what is the breaking point? Well, for those who deal with the problematic sexual behaviors, it is when we reach that point where our compulsiveness becomes overwhelming. But again, if folks remember, what I've talked about is the idea that your anxiety increases, therefore that increases your compulsiveness. And when that increases, the likelihood of making reckless decisions increase. So, but again, we just blow by these breaking points, not even being aware of them, because again, we're not that aware that my anxiety has, gone to that level, that intensity. So instead, here I am, I'm just now making very bad decisions. For those who are dealing with betrayal trauma, it's the same thing. If you allow your anxiety to get out of control, become, level higher, what's going to happen there is that you can no longer regulate your mood. You can't, because again, trauma brain has set in, and you're not going to be able to do that. So what's the answer to all of this? The answer is, think about the equation. Increased anxiety lead to increase of compulsiveness, which lead to an increase in the likelihood of risky or reckless behaviors. So if you're trying to fix this problem, looking at this equation, where do you begin? You go back to the anxiety. And you try to make sure that, one, you can keep it at a level where it is as low as possible. And how do we do that? Well, again, it's that idea of awareness, which as people who deal with addiction, we're not very good with awareness. There's not something we focus on very often. But if we do something such as meditation every day, and I mean, this is a, it becomes a new habit, a new norm in our life, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, to be able to be still. Just be still. It drives some of us crazy, being still. But we need to learn to do that without the distractions. And the reason it's so important is because then, as I start to now become more mindful of what's going on in my body, in my mind, in my emotions, I start to realize now, okay, wait a second. I'm not in that still place anymore. I can feel the anxiety. My body's telling me what it feels like. Okay, for some people, they say they can actually feels like their blood, they can feel it racing through their body at times. For other people, it's a point of tension around that way, to be able to understand that. Also, your mood, what has happened to the mood in the period of time that this has started to elevate. So we need to have that good understanding. So therefore, now it's like, all right, I've reached a point where now compulsiveness is going to start to elevate. What can I do? Well, if I have practiced meditation, if I have practiced sitting still, I have a point that I can go back to say, I need to go there. I need to bring myself back here. And that means you might have to exit the environment that you're in at that moment to go and do that. Okay. But if that's what's needed, you do. Maybe you don't. Maybe you can just do it right then and there. But you want to be able to bring yourself down from this very dangerous place that we're in, because it's going to lead us to either acting out, or it's going to lead the trauma brain to be at a point where, again, you can't regulate. You really can't even function at that point. So what is the benefit to you? So we learn how can we bring it back down to a place where now I can navigate once again. This all comes down to the idea of, when we talk about addiction, it's not about a cure, it's about managing. Tammy was talking about it last month when we were, doing a show about her managing it. And it's something that, once again, we do not do well. And we don't do it well because what do? We lack mindfulness. We lack that mindfulness because we have this underlying current of anxiety that runs through us all the time. So therefore, it's like go, go, go in our head. I mean, we may be people like sloths. I mean, it's like you barely move, but in the head, it's just that noise. It's incredible. It's just incredible. But if you're not learning how to regulate any of it, then you're just like, what? Blindfold yourself the next time you're going to play darts, let somebody spin you around and start throwing them. And the likelihood that you're going to hit the board is probably very low. More likely what you're going to do is you're going to hit somebody else. But that what happens when we start acting out in our addiction, or if the betrayal trauma rises to a point where it is out of control. We had a couple a few weeks ago, physical. They got physical. What does that buy you? What does that get you? Did that help your betrayal trauma at all? I'm not trying to blame anyone here. I'm just saying, I'm speaking facts. What's the benefit? And we have to be looking at the end benefit for all of this. The end benefit is, one, sobriety. And the other end benefit is security. And finally, the last end benefit is reconciliation. Or we move on, right? That's what you're trying to accomplish. But I see, and you've seen it too, Tammy, up close and personal. You see it every day. These people who are just spinning like this, out of control. And it's like, when does it stop? And I think it stops when you take that moment to slow everything down and ask yourself the question, what is the goal? What is our objective? And I gotta tell you, if the betrayer is not sober, then all deals are off anyway. I mean, it's just, we have nothing to work with at that point. That has to happen. That has to be the first step of everything. And if the betrayer second goal is not, oh, I want to create a safe environment, then we have a major problem too. Those two things have to be going on. But at the same time, those who are dealing with betrayal trauma have to be doing their own work to process through that pain point. How many times, I've met with, a woman who's gone through it's been horrible what their, husband had put them through. And she's sitting there and saying, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be sitting across from you. I'm like, you know what? You are absolutely right. You shouldn't. I haven't done anything wrong. I can't argue with you. I can't argue that point. However, this I can tell you, if you don't sit across from somebody, it's going to take you a lot longer to heal, if ever, because you need to be able to grieve in a healthy way. So therefore, we see again the people who do not go and get the help for betrayal trauma. And then here's the guy, the betrayer, who has done the work. And now, as you know, they're always 5 steps ahead. Woohoo, look at me.
Mhm.
And she's like, are you kidding me? I'm bleeding to death over here. So there need to be all of that. But again, it begins one of the things we need to be doing on our own proactively is addressing that anxiety level. Because if we do not do that in the long term, we're not going to, sobriety is going to be a struggle. And, healing from the betrayal is going to be a struggle. So I encourage you very much to put in place and try to be using meditation every day, 5 minute, 10 minute. If you want to send me an email, I have a library of meditation music that's bilateral, it plays in both ears, one at a time. And you could be using that too. So I'll be more than happy to do that. Tammy, that's all I got for you today.
Oh, that's great stuff. And I was thinking, and I don't get out of bed until I've done my meditations, because like that, I need to start my day on that. I just need to. And, that helps me get ready for my day, whatever that brings. I was thinking about the anxiety, and I thought, I really believe that as addicts, we have like zero tolerance for anxiety, which is why we're so quick to run to, our acting out. So we need to learn to manage the anxiety, but we also need to tolerate it. We have to learn that we can tolerate it. And I was thinking, most of the time, my anxiety, it's not, there's nothing real. Like it's these stories that I've convoluted and I'm telling myself, but if I really break it down to what's really going on, there's a shard in there that is, okay, that's an issue, and really worst case, sure, there could be something with this, but the chances of that, that major crisis happening are pretty slim, but that's where my brain went.
What are you talking about now? You're doing the inner child model.
Probably.
What I feel,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to take that process through that, sit with it. And again, people who have addiction, we don't sit with emotional pain, have to learn to sit with that discomfort. And then we take it and we move it over to wise mind. What is real? What I feel versus what is real, which are usually 2 different things.
Correct.
And yes, some of the feelings may come over into what's real. They may, but we're going to have a more objective viewpoint, because this is your inner kid. You're in a kid. You start listening to somebody's message about a client this morning. We were going through some of what he feels, and oh my gosh, it was like you were talking to a 6-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that derogatory.
Right? No, I get it. No.
Right here now, you got to move here to what is real, and now I can go and I can make a healthy decision.
Yeah. Yes. And but it's also deciding that being a little uncomfortable isn't going to kill me, and
Right.
that, anxiety is part of life. You said, it's kind of that thread that runs through things. So I can do things that will, tone it down in a healthy way, or I can run off to my, maladaptive coping mechanisms, otherwise known as my acting out, and cause the chaos. When you're talking about this, I was like, yeah, that's exactly right. It's this chaotic, I call it the negative 2-step also. It's like these dances that we do. It's like, you do this, I do this, and we do this, and and nothing changes. So one person just stepping off that cycle, starts to, give space to what is our goal. And if our goal is to have a healthy relationship to move forward, here's where we're at. How do we come together on that journey?
What is so ironic in this circumstance where there is betrayal and there's betrayal trauma is that what's happening with the person who's been betrayed when they are exhibiting that trauma, in many cases, what it's doing is triggering so many of the fears that the betrayer has that drove them in the first place to some of their addictive behavior. Again, not blaming those who've been
Right.
betrayed. I'm not saying, oh, stop, triggering him. I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying it's very ironic that, they could, again, most betrayers are very fear-based, and they've never seen the level of anger and hurt and pain, but they don't see it as hurt and pain. They see it as hostility. And like I said, it just triggers that in them. And so it's like, that's what I said, we got this loop that just keeps playing back and forth, back and forth. And at some point, you got to do the work. And there's a lot of great work that now people are looking to say at the idea of, okay, how do attachment styles fit into it? Because if again, we do trigger each other, even if there's not betrayal in a relationship, because we do come in with different attachments. The idea of, we trigger each other because we have different expectations for what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be married, what it means to be, in that type of a relationship. Because again, we saw different models, or maybe we didn't see any models. And then we bring that in here. And so therefore, again, it's just triggering. And you just wind up in a place where, after 6 months, a year, 18 months, 3 years, 7 years, 10 years, and it's like life lost. Life lost. That's the reason I bring this up. It's the reason I talk about it. I'm not sitting here once again to try to say to, those who've been betrayed, get your act together. That's not what I'm saying. Okay. I'm not saying to the betrayer, you got to work harder. What I'm just saying is, you know what? Can we start looking and using some common sense to try to figure out what it is we ultimately are trying to accomplish? And I think we missed that point a lot.
We've got lots of questions, but I appreciated you talking about, having the betrayed partner sitting across from you, and what the support is for a betrayed partner is very different than the work is for an addict. So it's having individual therapy. It's a different goal, for each of them, but it's so critical to the process. I know not everybody can, and not everybody, but it sure makes a difference to the process. So, okay, first question, Dr. Eddie, how do I, as an addict, start to differentiate attraction versus lust? How do I begin to share this with my partner? I feel like I share every time I see an attractive person, the hurt would never end.
Well, I think first and foremost, if you see an attractive person, I mean, what that is, that's observation. Okay. She's attractive. You know what? He's a good looking guy. Okay. That's a beautiful dog. That's just observation. And I don't think you need to turn to her every time and say, oh, I was looking at her and she's really pretty. That doesn't, you want to turn to her when you say, she's bothering me because I can't take my eyes off her legs or her breast. When you're objectifying, that's lust. Okay, that's what lust is. And I think, how do you begin to share with your partner? I think first and foremost is you're having conversation before you even go out in public, to be able to say, to ground yourself. My guys, they know I talk to them about what's the mission. You're going out in public, what's the mission? We're out to enjoy each other, we're going to dinner, or we're out to go to do shopping, whatever. And you stay on that mission. You stay on it. And if you do that, yes, you will observe, but you'll keep coming back to, why am I here? And more importantly, keep coming back to her, which is really important. Make sure that you're engaging with her, holding her hand, talking to her about things along the way. stopping along the way just to make, look and see what's going on, not with the people, but whatever shops or whatever it is. You want to do that because that is going to help to ease her anxiety, but also talking to her before you go out to say, hey, you know what? I'm in a really good place. I know what I'm going to be doing out there. My soul, you're the person I'm going to be focusing on. Yes, I may see women, but I'm going to see men. I'm going to see dogs. I'm going to see, I may see, but I will not linger. I will not lust. That's my promise to you. But then if you find yourself in a situation where all of a sudden you are lusting, then you have to say, hey, look, you know what? We need to remove ourselves from this environment. Or even you say to her too, like, hey, if you're going to get triggered by what's surrounding, because sometimes women do, you say, let's move ourselves out of here. Tell me, and we'll move away. And then you have to sit and figure out, okay, why? Why am I struggling today with objectifying? And most of the time, you're going to find out then that you're drained mentally, emotionally, physically, or spiritually, and your brain is screaming for stimulation.
I agree 100% that it's you having the framework. It's data. Like if I'm struggling with something, in recovery, we talk about restless, irritable, and discontent. And not too long ago, I was like, I'm restless, irritable, and discontent. What's going on for me? And it was like, I'm feeling this way. So understanding what was going on behind that. And I want so two things I want to clarify with pronouns, just for the sake of, because I saw this came through as a female, possibly addict. For the sake of this webinar, we use male pronouns for addict and female pronouns for betrayed partners. And we know that everybody, I mean, it runs across it. So it's just for ease of conversation. The other thing I was thinking, if you are doing, my colleague Scott has talked about bookends, like before you go out. So like Dr. Eddie talked about having, what is the goal of going out? But sometimes, calling your sponsor, I'm going to go out. It can be a triggering situation. I'm going to call you when I get home. And then you've got that intention of, and like knowing I'm going to be reporting to my sponsor. And the final thing I'll comment on is doing the check-ins. Fanos, but fine. There's a bunch of different check-ins, and we've got information on our website about Fanos. But having that check-in of like where I am emotionally today, like or where I am physically. Oh, I didn't sleep good last night. Whatever that is can help. Have that communication without it being, oh, that person's hot. Oh, I mean, like that's not the goal with this. Or, oh, I was super attracted. No, it's I'm vulnerable today. I'm going to have to be extra vigilant and taking care of myself.
Yes, correct, exactly. But also determine why. Why are you in that place today?
Yes. Okay, next question, Dr. Eddie. I'm so confused as to why someone's acting out would be emotional affairs if they struggle with fears of intimacy and emotional connection in their relationships. My husband's affairs were all emotional, and I know he had emotional affairs in previous relationships too. But wouldn't someone who is afraid of intimacy actually run from emotional affairs? Why would they seek out from others and not in their actual relationship? It's hard not to feel it as if something is wrong with me, that they, after all these years, are seeking out other women for validation and love. I'm already giving him at home. He keeps trying to help me understand it from his point of view, but I just don't get it logically. Thanks so much. That's a great question. Thanks for asking it.
Amazing question. But first I have to answer a statement. There is nothing wrong with you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, it is all him. Now there's several things that are playing out here. As you know, that when we are in the beginning stages of a relationship, which we refer to as romantic, love, the neurochemicals in the brain are just spinning, especially oxytocin. Okay. And therefore, it gives a major high and rush. As the relationship continues, all of that dies down. Right. And that's why it's so interesting how many times I've heard a wife say, you know what? He's not the guy who I met. The guy I met is nothing like this guy now. And I'm like, you know what? You are absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Because the guy who you met, his brain was overflowing with all of these pleasure chemicals. And he was love bombing you, and he was giving you everything. And he felt like the world was moving underneath his feet. It was a crazy thing. And then he went back to where he was, flat, maybe emotionally disconnected. I know it's not fair. I get it. I understand. But it's the way the brain operates. And I think for your husband, even though, again, you're trying to give him that affirmation, trying to give him that attention, he was looking for that rush again. And he went and he sought it out in others. There's also the idea, especially with the inner child, if you look at the unaffirmed child or the unnoticed child, they grew up in that type of environment. I don't care how much attention you give him, how much affirmation you give him, somebody else smiles and that kid is running. He is like a moth to the flame, because it's like, I don't know if this is really going to last. But we never got it before, and if we did get it, it didn't last. So therefore, let's go check this out. Again, this is why men need to work on this, to understand what inner children do they resonate with. So therefore, when somebody does smile at them, I have a client now. He's like this, he's like Prince Charming wherever he goes, even if he's with his wife. He'll just sit there and start, a conversation with the clerk, behind the counter. And she's like, what in the world are you doing? And if you're like this with me here, what the heck are you doing when I'm not with you? And he's finally starting to get it. And he's understanding, you know what? I need to tone this down. And what we really need to work on is his self-worth, his self-esteem. Because that's the underlying problem here. He doesn't have it because he didn't get it when he was younger. So or maybe he got a whole lot and then it got taken away. And so now it's just that constant search for it over and over and over again.
So, Dr. Eddie, don't you also, well, I was thinking, maybe you don't think this, but I was thinking in the intimate relationship with you, like there's the extra vulnerability. If it's an emotional affair, that person can come or go and it's not gonna, like, there's somebody else. But with you, there's this special bond. And so there's really more vulnerability, and addicts absolutely fear vulnerability, but really want it too. So it's that push and pull.
Yeah, see, that is a great point that you bring up. See, in this, when in your husband, you can hurt him, okay, by him being vulnerable to you, that could cause pain and hurt. One of these other people, they don't have, because he could be like, oh, wait, this isn't working well, walk away and go somewhere else. And so therefore, he's probably very reluctant to be vulnerable there. So therefore, the relationship isn't as deep and strong as it should be. There's many different components that you can see. All right, we're just scratching the surface.
Yes.
But to just give you an idea of why, again, somebody may act out with emotional affairs, even because he is emotionally disconnected. Because if he was emotionally connected, he would have been that way with you, and he would have never gone there. And he has to continue to work on learning how to be emotionally developed and to be emotionally mature.
And the last thing I'm going to say on this is, you don't understand it logically. I tell every betrayed partner, you will never understand this because your brain doesn't operate like that, and you would never do this. And so trying to put it into logic of your brain, it doesn't fit. We think differently. We're going to, like Dr. Eddie said, I'm anxious. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go act out, even though, like, you're sitting there and you would like listen to me, talking about how anxious I am. No, the safe thing is this thing I've been doing all of these years. And so the logic, while I love logic and I appreciate it, our brains think different than, betrayed partners. So I appreciate your goal, but you will always look at us and go, it doesn't make any sense.
But this goes back to, again, my number one rule in recovery, right? Because our brains don't work the same way. Slow, everything down.
Mhm.
You need to do that constantly all day long in order to be able to, ooh, good decision, bad decision. Good thinking, bad thinking. It's just an ongoing process.
And if you're not sure, you phone a friend who is like a
Right.
sponsor or somebody who can actually give you input on that. That's also part of the slowing it down. Get input. Okay, Dr. Eddie, the next question. Good day, Dr. Eddie. To what degree does the individual's most of typical of most male addicts emotional immaturity affect and impact the level of one's anxiety and also their impulsiveness to act out or in?
Well, first I want to say hello, Dan. Glad that you're here with us. All right, yes, it is tremendous. The fact that being emotionally definitely winds up impacting one's anxiety. How so? Again, let's go back. I have a child. I have a problem. There are bullies down the street. Okay. Went to dad. Just hit him. Went to mom. I don't have time to help you here. Okay. He's sitting with this. He doesn't know what to do with it. It's a great deal of anxiety. He thinks he's going to wind up getting beat up every day. So he has to come up with the idea again that, you know what, I'm not going to think about this. And he distracts himself. That anxiety, while he's distracting himself with too much sugar, too much food, too much television, now too many video games, whatever, that anxiety is still there. It's still, and this is where he's learning how to push that anxiety down, right? But after he gets done distracting himself, that anxiety is coming back. It may not come back until the next morning when he's getting ready to go out the door to go to school, but it's coming back. So therefore, again, not having that emotional maturity to learn how to handle it, which he's supposed to be taught, he's always going to deal with anxiety in his life, and he's always going to run from it. So yes, you are absolutely right. Being emotionally undeveloped or emotionally immature definitely impacts our level of anxiety and is also going to increase that compulsiveness that's going to cause us to act out or in.
And it doesn't matter male or female. I'm going to tell you that it doesn't, that's irrelevant. Okay, my name is Bran. I'm the betrayed partner. I feel like my husband is very devoted to me. However, I know that he can be triggered visually, and that makes me anxious when we're out in the world. Concurrently, my husband is anxious, and I will feel anxious, and it becomes an endless loop. What can we do to help each other in our anxiety?
We got to talk to each other, talk about what's going on out there. All right. I mean, my wife and I've told you guys the one story where I actually asked her to change places because there was a woman who was sitting across from me and didn't have underwear on and everything. Well, we went through something like that not that long ago again here in Ireland. We're down there for, but what happened there was there were these three women, they're all attractive, they're sitting here. My wife went and grabbed that seat and I'm like, no, come over, you sit here. I want to sit over there. She didn't even, well, she just did it because she knew what was going on. All right. Again, hopefully he gets to that point where he does that again. And why would he do that? To make you feel safe, to make you feel comfortable, to reduce your anxiety. But you should talk to each other before you go out about it. And how are you doing? Yeah, can he be triggered visually? Yes. Okay, any of us can. Women get triggered visually also. Okay, and if you're going to deny that,
I'm not denying it.
now
No, there's a lot of beautiful things in the world.
But the question becomes when you see it, it's like, ooh, do you move away from it? Okay, two things, right? There's the time when you look and you say, oh, attractive, beautiful dress, beautiful shoes, very nice, good hair, move, right? Nothing wrong with that. I've seen it. Designers create dresses because they want people to look at them. I saw it, I move, I'm on, right? Then it could be, my gosh, she's got long legs. Boom, move. Okay, I still made an observation, but I'm not lusting because I haven't taken it further. All I've done is I've seen, and now I have to move. And it really, actually, I am objectifying her because I'm not noticing the whole person. I'm seeing that. All right, so I am. But what I've still moved away because I realized that is not healthy, that is not good. And I move on. Those are wins. Those are wins. And unfortunately, there are many in the betrayal community who don't look at that as a win. They're saying, no, no, you should never even notice her leg. You should never even notice the fact that she has breasts. I don't know how to do that. Now, I will tell you, I don't have an interest. That I don't. Because I'm interested in my wife. But I see it, I don't have an interest. So no lusting goes on. That's important to understand. So anyway, to answer your question, how you can help each other is to talk to one another about it on a regular basis.
And I think, you talked, Dr. Eddie, about, doing a meditation. So like if you're going out, you do the prep work. Both of you do a meditation, get grounded, be prepared, and go, we're going out into the world. If I look at my husband in his eyes, like things connect. And so like, if you're feeling anxious, look at each other, turn and look at each other and say, I'm feeling a little anxious. Again, communicate. So I think that there are things in the moment, where you can connect with each other without it raising both of your anxiety. It would be more the de-escalation of it. What I've forgotten the term, but it's co-regulation. Co-regulating in a good way rather than co-regulating in the anxious way.
Right.
Okay, next question, Dr. Eddie. Compared to my childhood, my husband was troubling by not, but not abusive. I was extremely physically and emotionally abused. He wasn't. His dad was difficult to please. His mom was alcoholic, and then they divorced, and he was raised by dad. Other than he was kind of spoiled and entitled. Why is he like this and not me?
All right.
Oh,
well,
that's
first,
a really long question.
Yeah, first, I'm really sorry for what you went through.
Yeah.
Yes, this is something that would take me hours. I mean, there's so many variables that you couldn't put in here. But the reason why so therefore I can't tell you why exactly he is like this and you're not. And again, maybe you had somebody else in your life who served as that mentor who helped you to become more emotionally, mature, where he didn't. Because again, his life, even though maybe he wasn't physically abused, okay, living with an alcoholic mom, living with a father who's not easy to please, there's a lot of abuse there and there's a lot of neglect in it. So again, the only thing I can really answer here, that you both have your own issues. His issues have fallen into the line of addiction. Yours, probably not so, but maybe you're more of a worrier, so to speak. I'm just throwing something out. Okay, but there's something there. We all wind up with some sort of baggage because of the way we were treated when we were younger. But I'm sorry, I just don't have enough information that I can tell you why he's like that and not you.
So a couple of things I put in the chat. Dr. Enid Gray wrote a book called Neglect the Silent Abuser. And it can be, that mom was working 3 jobs as a single parent, or we had to have a facade of, everything looks good on the outside. And so there wasn't emotional bandwidth. And siblings that are raised in the same environment can deal with things differently. So I always say the why is of interest, but like knowing why. We have lots of people that know why and still act out. So it's really, how do we, with the baggage that we've accumulated thus far, move forward in a different way? I think what do we need to do? Those are more useful questions. But yeah, the why is like layers and years of, of continued work and of interest, but not, key. So this one is, what are the 3 R's that Eddie said? The last one was reconciliation. One was regulation, recovery. So do you remember what you said?
This
Okay.
is why when I have sessions, I take my notes. I also sit here with a pad as somebody's talking, and I pick up little words here and there. So I'm sorry, I do not. We'll have to go. This will be available
I was
on
just going to say the recording is going to be
yes,
posted later today. So you can go back and then you can email us and tell us what he said. So.
I'm going to go back. I want to know what I said. No.
Okay, the next question. My husband wants to change, is trying to do the work. He checks 13 of your 14 boxes, but he can't seem to stop lying and gaslighting. He knows it. He says he wants so badly to, but keeps happening. What can we do?
Well, there's a couple things that are going on here. Again, if he's in that hide and lie mentality, and again, gaslighting, which again, he's back to complaining, what's going on here? Fear. It's a fear, either a fear that I'm in trouble, a fear that I am not going to get it right, a fear that I'm going to disappoint. Okay. And he has to become extremely aware that he has this fear. And I would be journaling about it. I'd be looking back to things when he was younger that started all of this. And therefore, again, if he continues to do this, I would work with his therapist on it. And I would just say, hey, guess what? You know what? For the next 2 months, all we're going to focus on is the fear of telling the truth for whatever reason. And with that, hopefully what we do is start to diminish that fear somewhat. And the other thing is we go back to slow everything down. He should start getting into the habit that when you say something or ask something, he does not immediately respond. He waits. I thought it was interesting. I was doing a group yesterday with the Seeking Integrity residential folks. And the one guy there is a compulsive liar. And he was talking about it. And, his wife would say to him, so what color is your shirt? And he had a green shirt on. I go, blue. And she goes, no, it's not, it's green. Oh, okay, it's green. And he goes, I just jumped to it. I go, that's your anxiety because of your fear. And you're just compulsive and you just go. You have to slow everything down, take a step back, pause, answer. And then even if you do say, oh, it's blue, I forgot what color, it's blue.
Blue. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then say, no, that's wrong, it's green. That's okay too, to do something like that. But that's where I go. I've been working with his counselor on that. I've been doing a lot of journaling, a lot of self-reflection on it. And even for you to be able to say to him, all right, you told me that, is that the truth or is it not? Kind of give him a second chance and let him, again, not to answer right away and to evaluate, is that right or is that wrong? What did I say? It's a tough habit to break.
It is. And there's the 24-hour rule is one where you have the ability to come back within 24 hours and say, when I told you my shirt was blue, I mean, that's a really obvious one, but it's all the other things which I hear. The other thing is, if he's working a program, the 10th step of the 12 steps is that we take an inventory, and when we are wrong, promptly admitted it. And that's the opportunity to go, oh, when I said that wasn't accurate, or it wasn't the whole truth. I find that a lot too. There's lies of omission. It's like, well, it's halfway right. So, but it's still, it's not the truth.
Wrong.
Exactly.
It's halfway right.
Yes. But there's that, but it's part of the DNA of an addict is we lie or tell half truths or whatever, and we can justify and minimize and everything else. So I get your frustration with it too. It is incredibly wearing to have someone go, so Dr. Rob's Out of the Doghouse book is for men who've been caught cheating. And part of that, he talks about, the lying and everything else. We have a work group on that as well.
Yeah.
But there's lots of work groups. Dr. Eddie's Going Deeper, his Why Men Struggle to Love. Yeah, I mean, but out of the doghouse, Sex Addiction 101, there's a bunch of them, and there's a betrayed partner work group that starts again in August as well. So check those out. Those are not therapy or treatment, but they are really good supplemental work, to do the deeper work on things. So
The more he keeps doing that, then he never creates a safe environment for her.
yep, right, right. You can't build trust when
No,
there's constant lying. So
no.
question, do you feel addicts should consider anxiety, depression medication?
I do at times, depending. Okay.
Yes. All those
Uh,
qualifiers, yes.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, everybody gets on one. No,
No.
it is not that at all. And I'm also of the mindset that it's temporary, right? And the reason for it, and it's not so much anxiety meds. I'm looking at the depression medication, because anxiety meds, you have to be careful. They can become addictive. The depression medications, you don't have to worry about that, which again, we don't want to add another problem. But sometimes, because their anxiety is so out of control, they have a very difficult time starting to get rolling with recovery. And there's a lot of hit, miss, hit, miss. So therefore, for me, it kind of gives them the edge to be able to slow down the noise in their head and then be able to move forward. But like I said, I'd like to see it for 6 months, maybe a year. And therefore, that again gives the edge for us to do the work we need to do. Because there are some people who they come into my office, and you know what? If they don't get on a medication, I can't help them. No one's going to be able to help them. Because again, there's just too much that's going on here that we can that it doesn't allow us to penetrate what we're trying to accomplish.
And please don't go to your GP that just hands out every medication. Get it working with somebody who's qualified, who understands addiction and these issues. Like for the guys that come to our treatment program, if they are struggling and they need that evaluation, we have someone who understands addiction and also understands these issues, so they can help them get the right medication, time release, whatever it is, to really identify it and watch it. But I love my GP, so I'm not, but they hand out the same pill to everyone in the same dose, and so it's not necessarily the right fit. It's just, this is what we give. So
Yeah.
okay.
I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody when I said, yeah, you know what, you need to go and get on meds. And they come back and because they've gone to their general practitioner and he wants to know what you think. Like, you know what? I know one medication that you, but that's not how you're supposed to be evaluating you. There are tests that they can take, DNA tests that they can take.
Yes, I love
Find out
those. Yes.
what's the most effective one for you. So anyway.
Yes. Yes, I have, so I will throw this in really quickly. I'm not affiliated with them, but I have a place that actually does the DNA testing, because my metabolism is going to be different than yours, and how we, so what we need, I think it's a great approach to helping people find the right medication. So email me, Tammy, TAMI @seekingintegrity.com. If you want that, I'll send you
And if they do that test, it's for all medications. It's not just
Yes. Yeah.
for this.
Yeah. I think it's brilliant. I was so,
It's going to
I
tell you
thought it
which
was great.
meds are going to interact, which means that
Yes.
they're not going to be effective or they're going to cause major side effects.
Yes. And I'm truly, I'm not affiliated. I don't even remember their name. So I'm not. So, okay. Next question, Dr. Eddie. My husband has been going to a SA group for 2 years, and he is still saying that he is going to groups because it's my boundaries, but he doesn't feel it's helpful for him at all. He says he does not connect to the fellows from what I know he needs to do, because he wants to, not because he knows I want him. And he thought, so basically he's going to the meetings only because she wants him to. You can tell what I feel about this.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I'll let you get on your soapbox in a moment.
Yes.
First and foremost, I would be interested to know if at any point did he find the group helpful? And if he's saying right now, I'm going now because I don't feel it's helpful any longer, and I'm just doing it because you're making me do this. In that case, I say find another group. Find something different to do, but you should be in group. Right. So that's where I would take that. And if he's had this attitude from the very beginning, then he doesn't understand and appreciate what the concept of group is. And somebody needs to sit and talk to him about that. Because again, this is also where he learns about, emotional intimacy. He starts to be able to share and be vulnerable in a way that he haven't before. My guess is that he's probably not. He's just kind of sitting in the background, and maybe if somebody calls on him, he might, say a few words, but that's it. But again, if he found it helpful and he no longer finds it helpful, find a new group.
I just put the information. We've got lots of 12-step groups, and SA, but SCA is like SLAA, SPAA. There's bunches. So, but what I hear, and I've been doing this a while, is somebody who's going to the meetings and looking for all the differences, and probably has been doing that from the get-go. I'm just sitting here because my wife is making me, and that. So I'm not going to connect with anybody. I'm not really going to do the work. And so that's warming a seat. What I really care more about is two things: healthy boundaries for you. And I hear you have a boundary of you want him to do this for your safety. But what else is he doing? If this is the one thing that hasn't been as successful, and I agree with Dr. Eddie, find a different group. But has he made progress so that you are seeing real change in him? 2 years. I mean, Dr. Eddie has talked about being the new guy, and is he a new guy, or is he the same guy just with resentments of like, I have to go to this meeting because my wife is making me. So to me, it would be more what changes are you really seeing with him, and what is your healthy boundary, about if not this group, then and for my safety, what else is there? Okay. Next one, Dr. Eddie. Thank you so much for the topic and approach. I can accept anxiety as a core of addiction and even betrayal. Is there the possibility of a deeper core that also gives rise to the common result of anxiety? I missed the first 3 minutes, and it will be posted on our website. A deeper core that gives rise to the common result of anxiety.
And because you missed the first 3 minutes, you missed that part of it. And that's the idea of the unresolved childhood pain points. I mean, that is where the anxiety began. We're sitting there as kids. We're facing difficulties in life. There's no adult who's guiding us along. We don't know what to do with this. So therefore, I'm going to distract myself, find something so I don't have to think about it. So yes, you're right. There are other reasons that cause the anxiety. But now we're at the point where the anxiety would really need to be resolved, as well as, again, understanding what am I being triggered about. Because again, that's when you go back to the unresolved childhood pain point, so you can understand, oh, that's a trigger. Rejection, for example, is a trigger. Abandonment could be a trigger. Feeling unappreciated could be a trigger. Anything like that happens, again, my anxiety level probably going to increase.
Okay, so the next one, and then I'm going to put some more resources in the chat for things. But my husband experienced emotional abuse as a child. After 1 year of couples therapy, it is impossible for him to sit in any of my emotions without major acting out in behaviors. He is constantly states, I make him feel the same way his mother made him feel. Lots of projection, and our process is stalled. What do you suggest as direction for him, us?
Well, this is a direction for him, more so than you, because again, if he still doesn't have the skill set to sit with your, emotions, then again, we have the inward focus guy who is more about me. His emotions are trumping your emotion. Now, I'm sure if he were to jump in here right now, he'd probably say, yeah, but she's relentless. She just never lets up. It's just constant. And I don't know what to do about it. And in that case, that's part of what you talk about when you're, looking at, couples counseling. What are the rules for engagement? How do we move forward? But again, if he does not allow you to be able to share your emotions, to voice your emotions, he's not creating that safe environment for you. So again, I would go back in the couple session to talk about this idea that he cannot sit there with it and then start coming up with a game plan for that. And maybe a couple of therapists that need to talk to his individual therapist, and they can come up with a game plan for teaching him how to be able to, again, make you feel safe.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, I put in the chat because somebody asked about the work group, so I put that in. Somebody added sobriety, securing, security, reconnection and rebuilding was what they shared to quote you. So there you go. I put in the work groups because somebody asked about Dr. Eddie's work group and the others, so I put a link about that. I think there's 2 more questions left, and I don't know what your time limit is, but otherwise I'm happy to.
I do need to run. I
Okay,
actually.
I'm going to take a picture of those. And
I
then,
did it. I already have them.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, good. I will too. No, I will take it too, because then I got it too. So, because I store them in a little spot. Okay, so we'll see you next month. Thank you. Thank you all for being here and asking great questions. And this video will be posted today.
Thank you, folks. Catch you next month.
Bye.